Welcome, everybody, to the Presence Panel. My name is Chris Lunsell. I'm the Director of Content and host from Luxury Presence. We're so excited to have everybody here today for our October Presence Panel titled Executive Insights, Steering Through Real Estate's Transformative Moments. Like I said, my name's Chris. I'm from Luxury Presence, but I'm not the only person on the screen here. Joining us today, we have three esteemed panelists who are known for their calm, demure, balanced opinions that are always the most polite thing at every single conference in the world. No, that's not true. We've got three of the most opinionated, experienced, and provocative voices in the real estate space from lots of different backgrounds here to provide their perspective on the changing landscape that is the real estate industry through the lens of the lawsuit settlements that are happening with the National Association of Realtors and the changing of the industry. I could introduce these guys, but I'd much rather they introduce themselves. Let's give 30 seconds to each of our panelists to introduce themselves, who they are, what they do, and what they're excited to chat about today. Let's start with Jack.
Great. Hi, Chris. Welcome to all of our Luxury Presence friends and followers. My name is Jack Miller. I'm the president and CEO of T360. We are a management consulting and research firm in residential real estate with probably next to the National Association of Realtors, the most volume of research about the industry. We publish 2 to 3 books a year on the industry, and we're composed of about 40 executives, most of which are former practitioners. I myself have worked for a national franchisor, owned and ran a local independent brokerage, sold real estate for a period of time, but have been in consulting for the last 11 years. And we principally work with brokers, franchisors, large teams, MLSs, and associations on management consulting. And we've been writing about the lawsuits, the changes, the business model changes for years and years now. So that's me in a nutshell. That's our company in a nutshell.
Jack, thanks for joining us. James, would you mind introducing yourself for us?
Yes, James Dwiggins. I'm the CEO of a national franchise called NextHome, about 630 offices across the US. We're in all 50 states. I'm also the co-CEO of a PropTech company called Raise, which is a new company on the scene that's trying to help agents better articulate their value to consumers. I'm also a named defendant in all of this class action litigation, so I'll give you some perspective of somebody who's gone through all of this nonsense as well as settled. And for those of you that don't know me, then get to hear some of my provocative comments today, which is he was referring to me when he said that. So
never, James, never. Then last but certainly not least, Spencer Rascoff. Spencer, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. I'm Spencer Rascoff. I have done a lot of startups. My first startup was Hotwire, which we sold to Expedia, and then I left Expedia to start Zillow about 18 years ago. Was CEO and founder of Zillow, ran it for almost 15 years, left Zillow a couple years ago, so I'm no longer involved in Zillow. And since then, I've been angel investing and starting new companies. The one that I spend most of my time on is a company called Pacaso, which is a PropTech company that fractionalizes vacation homes. So we're sort of like NetJets for second homes. And we sold over $1 billion of those. And then I'm an investor in a couple dozen other startups, including Luxury Presence, where I'm a small investor.
Thanks, Spencer. Guys, it's great to have you here. And for everyone joining us from across the country and across the world, we're so glad to have you as a part of this conversation. As a reminder, when you signed up for this webinar, you were given the chance to submit a question to our panelists for discussion today. The conversation we'll be having is based around your suggestions and questions. We're so excited to dive into the things that matter most to you. If there are other questions that pop up, you're welcome to use the Q&A function. If we can get to them, we certainly will. If not, I'll be happy to address them in an email or afterward via some communication channels with Luxury Presence. But let's dive right in. I want to start by talking a little bit about the industry structure and the business models that have been in place for many, many years and how those models are changing. Jack, T360 does a ton of research into what drives successful business models in the real estate space. Given all the changes that we're seeing right now, what are the changes that you think the business models of real estate might encounter, especially when it comes to brokerage structure, given all
Sure.
of the lawsuits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what we've seen, it's a little early to say what's the impact of the specific practice changes on business model. I can tell you what we've been tracking for the last 2 decades is a lot of consolidation that's happened in the industry. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. I think you've got a question related to that. We looked last year at the top 100 brokerages and their history when we published our trends report last year, and classified the top 104 fundamental business models: traditional, a graduated split model, capped, fee-based, and what we call kind of business generation or team models. And what I'll tell you is over the last 6 years, we've seen the capped commission model within the industry be the one that has grown the most. It grew over 300% in the last 5 to 6 years. So it's our, and then fee-based also grew. All the models grew in terms of total sales volume that they consumed in the top 100, but the capped model appears to be the one that is growing the fastest, followed by the fee-based model. How these settlements impact the underlying business models of the industry, I think is still, we've kind of got to wait and see on that. Is it going to impact the amount of commission dollars that are available in the transactions, real estate professionals or not? I think it's a little too early to tell. We've done some survey work, and we've kind of got a third. We surveyed 400 practitioners and brokers, and we got, a third of the people said, "Hey, I'm kind of staying level with where I was." We had about a third of the people saying, "Hey, I'm having some challenges with getting what I was paid before." And we had a third saying, "I'm able to charge, I think I'm able to charge a little bit more now because of the situation." So I think it's too early. I think it's too early to call. I think we'll know a lot more as we get into the actual impact of the changes.
James, what about you? You're leading an organization through these changes right now. Are you seeing any of these impacts either on your franchise operations or in the day-to-day operations, boots on the ground at NextHome?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two camps right now. There's what I would call the camp of brokerages across the US that are trying to do things the old way, compensation sharing, trying to do things as if it was in the past. And there's a group of brokerages that are moving to the new way, us being one of them, a bunch of others like EXP, Barrett & Warner, Real, et cetera, where they're not doing cooperative compensation any further. I think that you're going to see that continue to divide, but then consolidate, where the whole industry moves away from cooperative compensation eventually. Obviously, it's going to be a competitive disadvantage for people that are doing it, because you compete with an agent on a listing presentation that isn't doing cooperative compensation and your fee is going to be higher. You will lose market share, which is what's happening. Number two, it's a massive legal risk. And then number three is it's actually harming sellers when you're doing cooperative compensation. So that's going to be a big thing that's going to continue to grow. And certainly that's causing some divide in the space. I can tell you from Jack's comment, it's dead on accurate from what I'm seeing. Good agents in this new world where they can curate their own buyer experience that has nothing to do with what the listing agent was able to negotiate for compensation are charging more. And I've been saying this for a year and a half. I said good agents will charge more, and people thought I was nuts. That's actually happening. They're going in and articulating value clearly and having the buyer sign a different rate than what they were being given by the listing agent. I think agents who are not as good as articulating value are going to see some type of drop in compensation, let's say 25 to 50 basis points. And then agents that are new, that aren't good at the craft yet, will see a lower amount. So you're going to see the market push people up or down. The well-educated, well-trained agents are going to do very well in this new world. And the fact is, consumers are willing to pay a premium for convenience and service. In every study you read, they're willing to pay for that. It's a matter of how good you are at articulating that value to consumers to get them to agree to it. So
100%. Spencer, I'd love your take on this from a PropTech perspective. As James says that good agents can and will charge more, are the tools that they're using, do you expect these tools to change? Do you expect that PropTech companies and digital marketplaces are going to adjust as the practices of these good high-performing agents change, or are we going to have to wait and see a little bit on that?
Well, I mean, the consolidation of more market share in top teams and top agents, that's been going on for, I don't know, 10 or more years, and that's going to continue to accelerate. Part of that is software. Part of it is they're doing lead generation at scale. They're more instrumented. They're just more well-run companies than solo practitioners or agents that only do a couple deals a year. I guess I'm a little bit more bearish about where commissions are going overall than maybe. Well, we didn't really. James and Jack didn't we didn't get numbers from them, and maybe they won't give estimates. I don't know, but like I tend to think that a lot of buyers are going to end up being unrepresented. Not the majority, but maybe it's a quarter. I don't know. Maybe it's a third of buyers are going to choose not to pay a buyer's agent commission. And obviously those are going to be on more modest homes. They're not going to be on the super high-end homes. And there's going to be commission compression overall on the buyer's agents that do end up continuing to be hired by buyers. So I think we're at like 5.2% maybe overall, 2.6, sort of going into this whole new chapter of the industry. And I think that 5.2 commission is going to probably end up in the low fours, kind of around 1 to 1.5% on the buy side and the rest on the sell side. So I think that probably puts me a little bit on the bearish side. I've seen numbers that are even more negative than that. But it is important to remember before everybody throws tomatoes at me or freaks out too much, that there's been so much home value appreciation that even like when we started Zillow in 2005, 2006, we were at about 6%, but that was 60 billion of commissions. And today we're at 5.2%, but it's 100 billion of commissions. So yes, the commission percentage has come down quite a bit from 6 to 5.2, but the dollars have gone up a lot because there's been so much appreciation in home values.
James, any response to that? Do you think that compression is a real thing? Do you think that bear case is legitimate, or does that not bear out in your experience right now?
No, he's correct. And to be clear with my statement, I said good agents would charge more. That's a small percentage of the market. I don't mean that to be disrespectful to the industry. I don't know if I agree with Spencer 100% on the percentage of people that go unrepresented, and I'll just give some stats to back this up. So, if you think about just a little bit of history, in 2001, the use of a buyer's agent was 69% of the time. That was before Zillow even existed. The advent of the internet and all of this data and all of these things was about replacing the agent. We're now at 89% for use of an agent on the buy side with all of this additional data in the market. I think what people forget in America, I'm using just right now as a time frame. In 1960, dual income households was 30%. Now it's 60%. We're in a world where mom and dad both work, don't have time to do anything. And if you have kids like I do, it just makes things more complicated. I don't think people in an infrequent transaction that they're going to do 2 to 3 times in their life want to go into it without some type of representation. That's where I maybe differ from Spencer slightly. What that is debatable, whether that's an agent by the hour, a flat fee, just dealing with the contract. I don't know, but unrepresented, like doing it on my own, I think is unrealistic at this point in time. Time will tell who's right or wrong on that. So
yeah, I got to jump in here. I think Spencer's very bearish. So, and the reason is I look at the mechanisms by which that work gets fulfilled, and the thing is when we've looked at lower cost models in the US, which we've had for a long time, you can go do a low cost model today. You could do that 20 years ago. There are shops that would say, hey, we'll just put it on the MLS and it's low service. And there's buy side models, same thing. We've had those. The US consumer has chosen the full service model, and so it's been rejected by the consumer. And it's been rejected by the practitioners. The practitioners are like, I'm not going to do all this work and not get paid. So will there be some reduction in commission? Yeah, probably, but I think a full point's too much. I think there may be just in this transition, we may lose a quarter or half a point. So
yeah, I mean, you guys are absolutely right that like we saw with Redfin, they originally started with like they would rebate 3/4 of their commission on the buy side or something, and then they weren't getting market share, and then they reduced it to like half, and then a quarter, and now, I mean, in any Redfin market, you can just go to a traditional agent and say, give me the Redfin deal. And so Redfin's not even really positioned as a discount low fee brokerage anymore from the consumer standpoint, because they just weren't getting market share. So I totally agree with you about that. The one difference is the media attention about this settlement. Like all of my friends that are not in real estate, they say to me, they're like, "Oh, I heard the government lowered commissions. Like finally, it's not 6% anymore because the government said commissions are lower. So now I finally can negotiate commissions." Right? That's new. That's new news. So like I had one top agent, I think actually it was a luxury presence client in I think it was Naples, Florida, tell me that 12 out of the last 12 listing presentations, the seller tried to negotiate on commission, and she said that never used to happen before. And so I said to her, I said, well, what was the result of those 12 negotiations? She said 12 out of 12, she was able to keep them at the 5.5 or 6% with co-op that she had always gotten historically. So I think she's an example of what James was referring to, of like a top agent that's able to demonstrate value. In that case, it's on the sell side, not the buy side, and maintain price. So that's that's impressive.
But that's also a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean this respectfully, but
Yeah.
we suck as an industry as a whole of articulating value, and now we have to get really good at it. So
Yeah.
the agents that are doing that, she just got better, and
That's
everybody
right.
on the buy side needs to get better, and
Yep.
everybody needs to up their game. And I've been vocal about it. I think 20 to 30% of the agents go away, and honestly, good riddance. Like we have too many people with a real estate license as it is. Like,
Right.
not supposed to
Yep.
say that, but that's truth. Like we will get
I
more
agree.
professional when we are pushed to be better at our job and our craft. So fine.
one of
Let the
my
press come out.
one of my favorite talking points at Luxury Presence is that the barrier to entry into real estate is typically very low, but the barrier to actual success is pretty high because, just to your point, James, there are a lot of generic break even professionals that have been a part of the industry for a long time. And we are seeing a lot of momentum that is indicating that most of those break-even, generic, mediocre professionals won't likely be in the industry long term. I'd like to turn though, and James, I'll come back to you here. I'll come back to you on this one. We've been talking a lot about the market momentum via consumer behavior and expectations, but it's more than just the consumer interpretation. There's also going to be actual regulatory challenges and opportunities through the changes that are being made. In your estimation, James, are there any particular challenges and opportunities that are a direct result of the language in the settlements themselves that you think are particular things to note here for our audience? What should people be worried about? What should people be considering opportunities right now?
God, I don't want to sound negative, but sure, I'll go down the list. I mean, we have huge problems that are occurring here. And I don't think they're seeing the surveys like, oh, it's status quo. I'm like, okay, well, you're feeling the hangover effect of all these deals that were signed in August before. Now we're starting to move into this new world. And there's some significant issues with regards to what is in the settlement, who's enforcing it. Like, I'll give you an example. How do you know if multiple buyers are signing multiple buyer rep agreements? Because they're doing it right now all over the place, because agents are sending a buyer rep agreement across to DocuSign. They don't read it, by the way. They click sign, they signed it. They don't know what's in the damn thing. They don't know that it's a 6-month exclusive contract. They're doing it on all these houses. I know, I've got 6,000 people in my company, and it's happening all over the US. By the way, no one's enforcing that. No one's even looking at the buyer rep agreements. No one's collecting that stuff. And I'm not ragging on MLSs. I'm just stating the facts here. How do you know if the buyer agent's being overpaid? You can only be paid what you agreed to in your buyer rep agreement. But if an agent on the co-op side is offering a higher number than that, who's actually verifying what the true compensation is going to be? Is the title company doing it? What about modifying buyer rep? This is a part that nobody understands, and associations are getting this wrong all over the place. You cannot modify your buyer rep agreement up, period. That's not what that's about. The spirit of the settlement is incredibly clear. The reason why you sign a buyer rep agreement before showing any houses is to determine your fee regardless of what the seller is offering. That's the whole point of that. So all these amendments or modifications, or I'm asking my buyer to go up because the seller is offering more, by the way, that creates steering, which is a huge problem that's happening all over the place. This is another one. Non-realtors don't have to follow the settlement terms. They weren't party to the settlement. So like you can have licensees operating differently than realtor members who, if they want to not get into further litigation, have to follow those terms. California just instituted AB 2992 so that licensees have to follow the same standard as realtors, which is smart. Like The issue that to answer your question, I think there's a huge problem here, and that is NAR is not giving as clear guidance as it should. The states and associations and the statewide, they're all operating differently, literally. Like they're operating on whatever basis they want. And so you have this hodgepodge implementation of it. I think you're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of the states come in to regulate. And I'm not a big government guy, like I'm not that guy at all. But part of me is like, we kind of need to do it so that there's some standard that everyone's following through. And I'll give you the last one that's on my talking points. The recourse is a code of ethics violation, which 99.9% of all realtors have never read. Don't even know what's in it. Don't even care for that matter. So like, oh, I can't be a realtor member anymore. Peace out. So like there needs to be enforcement that in my mind is at the state level, not at the association, but the state regulatory level, so that if you're doing things that are inaccurate, you get your license revoked. Watch how fast our industry professionalizes itself when people's licenses are getting yanked. So like, I think we're in the first inning of implementation issues, and I think these things are going to be big. I've had agents call me and go, hey, guess what? My buyer bought the house, and then there were 3 other real estate firms that said that they signed a buyer rep agreement. Who gets paid the commission?
There is a lot to untangle.
Sorry, that was a lot, but you just asked me, so I gave you the download. So
I'm glad. That's what we need.
Yeah.
That's just
yeah.
Jack, weigh in on this on James's first list here. You've got a lot of experience dealing with the brokers and team leaders who are coming to T360 looking for not just consulting but direction on these particular issues. Where do you fall on these?
Well, we started auditing brokers' practices around buyer brokerage agreements about 18 months ago. We started offering that as a consulting service. And because of that, we began collecting agreements in, I think we've looked at agreements in 45 of the 50 states. We've looked at people's policy and procedures guidelines and all this sort of stuff. And what I'm here to say is that if you have not done a self audit of that, and you're probably like a walking set of violations right now, not even just with the settlement, but with other things that may happen. So it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. And the reality is you have an industry of litigators that are looking at this first settlement and saying, well, I wonder what else is in there. So we need to be really good about how do you handle unrepresented buyers? What do you do if you're in a state that allows, dual agency? How do you handle that in the most appropriate way possible? And I would say, like, even things like the forms you're using, they may be problematic in future cases. And it's as simple as this. If your forms are created by a committee of brokers who all got together and decided how business was going to work in a market territory, I know you could say they had the best of intentions, but from a regulator's perspective, or from a consumer advocate's perspective, or from an antitrust lawyer's perspective, you could say, look, that looks like you guys straight up collaborated to preserve a commission structure in a certain way or to incentivize certain behavior in the market. And I'm just saying, so with a lot of our clients, we advise them, you need to question the documents on which your business is based, which is your listing agreement, your buyer agreements, any of your addendums, and how you actually transact to work with the consumer. And if you think you're clever working around the agreement, you're not. It will mess you up. And please don't. So if you're doing workarounds, all I got to do to know the state of affairs is poke my head in some Facebook groups in this industry and know that we have more trouble coming, because you see people in there who do a lot of business, by the way. I go look them up and it's like, wow, you do a fair amount of business and you're hacking the settlement. You're trying to work around in this clever way. You're like having your buyer sign 3 different versions of the buyer agreement with different percentages in them because you think that's clever, right? No. Please do not. Stop, right? Hold the phone.
Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, just one comment. So I want everybody to hear this because I don't mind being open and honest. My legal fees in defending this were $100,000 a month. I just want everyone to hear what I just said. None of you on this line can afford that. And if you are, you should get out of real estate and do something else anyway. Like if you're wanting to spend $100,000 a month in legal fees, stop, because they're not done. Robbie Braun, Michael Ketchmark negotiated with both of them. What Jack just said is dead on accurate. The next class action is going to be forums created by a group of competitors that are propping up compensation. The second one's going to be companies doing cooperative compensation who are screwing sellers because of what the practice does. I could go on with this. You do not want to play around with these guys They've got unlimited resources and they're not done. This is just the beginning, unfortunately.
So let me take that. Actually, I want to turn that question over to Spencer, but frame it in a different way. Spencer, I've always been fascinated with the through line that your companies and investments have when it comes to their commonality of bringing complicated or seemingly complicated actions like travel booking, real estate listings, fractional ownership of homes. You have managed to divine the secret sauce that is taking all of these complicated contractual experiences and making them so that we can execute them consistently and legally. I'd love your take here. Is there an opportunity for somebody in the prop tech space to come in and make this better, or is the field just a completely overgrown here and we need to burn it down and start from scratch?
I mean, I have a headache just listening to the concerns that James and Jack have rightly raised, and grateful that I don't have to deal with those day to day. I mean, I've always focused on the consumer side because that's just kind of what I usually do, and you know, but I think a lot of these thorny issues aren't really solvable on the consumer side because you've got regulators and plaintiffs' attorneys that are going where the money is, which is on the B2B side. I think it was, again, I'm gone from Zillow now, but I think it was smart that Zillow came out with a buyer's brokers agreement. I actually am not sure. I'm curious what James and Jack think. I'm not sure if it's comprehensive enough or it has the right, you know, protections or exactly how they drafted it, and if it works in every state, et cetera. But at least at a high level, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's smart of them. They're trying to sort of get ahead of this and bridge the gap between the consumer side and the professional side. So I was glad to see them at least take a swing at that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all of my B2B experience has been around improving lead conversion for agents. So sort of like up funnel, giving them software tools, and I've got a couple other technology businesses that are in this space right now in PropTech, that stay away from this hornet's nest as much as possible and leave it to the lawyers and to the brokerages themselves that are at the point of transaction, rather than up funnel during research and then kind of mid funnel around lead conversion.
Makes sense. Let's turn our attention a little bit to the future here. I want to think about the industry. I want to think about strategic planning. I want to think about the platforms and the marketplaces that we do business. James, why don't we start with you? How do you think companies like NextHome are going to interact with technology in order to service your clients moving forward? Is there a version of business today that continues to be successful, or do you think, given all of the problems that you've just outlined, that we need a kind of an innovative approach to solving these problems and maybe a new innovative set of tools to do it with?
Well, I mean, to me, there are two buckets. There's the procedure, there's the regulatory, there's the legal, which is like its own bucket. And that mess is just going to take time to clean up. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight. I think that's going to take a lot of time. As Jack mentioned, dual agency, massive problem. 9 states currently ban it. It's probably going to get banned in all of them. E&O insurance is going to go up the more dual agency happens. That's a conversation you could have. E&O insurance may not even be available in 2 years if we keep doing dual agency. It's a whole other discussion. So there's that bucket. The technology side, look, I mean, Spencer's been at the front of this with Zillow, and they're probably they were the forefront of pushing this this initiative. Everyone's been trying to get to an end-to-end solution. I mean, that's what, I just interviewed Jeremy Waxman on our pod, and they're talking about how they're trying to create a much more seamless real estate experience. We've all been trying to do it for a long time. There's a lack of resources and money in residential real estate. Companies like Zillow, Rocket's trying to do part of that. There's certainly a lot of disruptors in the space that could pull that off. And that creates more efficiency with the idea of the cost of purchasing real estate comes down. And I think you'll see some of those efficiencies. I think that in the next 5 years, you'll see some pretty incredible automation done through AI. I don't think AI is going to replace the realtor. I think that it's going to be AI empowered agents. You've heard this terminology before, but I think that's certainly there. I do think long term, as we get more technology in place, the value of the agent changes. And I think there's an opportunity for the agent to move away from being transactional and much more of, I don't know what the right word is, Jag, maybe you can fill me in on this a little bit or help us fill in, but it's more of like an advisor on the ownership of the house for a longer period of time. And it's not just this 90-day window, but the 8 to 13 years they own the house. I think agents are going to move that direction. Some great tech coming out in that space, like homeowner.ai does that. There's a bunch of them that are trying to think about that long tail aspect to it. There's certainly going to be a big movement. I'm excited to see the movement between Zillow with Showing Time Plus. You've got Homes.com with acquisition of Matterport. I've had a conversation with the CEO of Matterport recently, and what they're going to do with augmented reality is going to be absolutely freaking game changing long term with how you interface in an experience. I think it's exciting, but there's definitely going to be a lot of consolidation. I'd say in 10 years, half the companies are left in residential real estate, but I'll leave this one comment, so I don't want to make this sound negative. I have always said, and I continue to believe, that technology companies underestimate the relationship between their agent and a buyer or seller. I think people really severely underestimate that. And I say that because it's not just a transaction. Everything is so damn emotional and elevated and stressful that there's this element of needing a human being to help me through that. What that looks like is debatable, but I just don't think in 10 years there's no agent there. It's just looks different, but somebody's still guiding me in this process. So that's kind of my holistic view of it. And we're certainly, moving our business in that direction as a whole, as well. So,
Jack, any response to that? Do you think AI will play the same kind of role that James just laid out there? Or is AI going to play a bigger role? I've heard a lot of folks suggest that AI is going to take over a much larger percentage of the responsibility of an agent. Any thoughts there?
I have a lot on that, and there's many industry trends that are being accelerated because of the settlement, the market conditions, and the advent of a technology like artificial intelligence, which, in our opinion as an advisory group, will be as impactful, if not more impactful, than the personal computing revolution. Like, this is because every stick of technology that we have will be rebuilt with AI capabilities in mind and AI capabilities built in. And so that's a massive change. There's sort of two ways that we think about artificial intelligence and its application into our industry. There is, where can we reduce or make the transaction more efficient? Like, there's incremental stuff that we can just do better, where you say, look, I've got this, infinitely never gets tired resource that can do compliance on all of our documents, right? Or they can help manage a contract to close process better than a human would, maybe, right? So there's incremental value, and then there's transformational value, where it's like, oh, well, like in the same way that a business is transformed when you hire, like, usually an agent's business transforms when they hire their executive assistant. They go, oh, okay, wait a minute. I can now focus on whole other parts. And it's sort of like everybody in the industry just got, a college intern who needs a little bit of supervision, right, from an AI perspective. And I think that is a transformational value that shows up in a lot of different other ways, where it's like, there are things that we used to spend a lot of money doing, video, editing photos, doing all those kinds of things. The cost of those just dropped and just became capable without you hiring an employee or even having a contractor relationship. You can just go say, look, I now am a video production company because I have a relationship with an AI-empowered video platform that I understand how to manage. Now, granted, you have to learn, you have to extend yourself, but it just put a lot of things in the grasp of the top performing agent or the small team or the broker that really were out of grasp before. And those are transformational elements of artificial intelligence that I think are very exciting. People look at this and they go, record low unit transaction volume, these terrible settlements, and then we have AI. And I'm like, well, this is the best time ever to build a new thing, because your competitors are super constrained by whatever they're doing right now. And you got this shiny new toolbox of amazing stuff that, if you don't get too carried away, you can build thoughtfully and create a new thing. So I think it's an incredible time for this technology to have shown up at this moment.
Absolutely. Let's take a moment and look forward a little bit, maybe 5 years into the future. Spencer, you've always been great at having a direction of what our consumers are looking for and what their expectations are of the industries that you're a part of. How do you think the residential real estate industry from a consumer perspective is going to change in the next 5 years?
Well, this is a consumer and professional, I guess I would say, which is I see many people in the comments talking about how this is a relationship business and the importance of the personal connection between the agent and the consumer. I strongly agree with that. I think technology is going to allow that to become supercharged. So like when I was growing up as a kid in New York, my mom was a realtor, and I remember when she first got an answering machine, and that was an unlock in productivity. Then I remember when she got a car phone. That's what we used to call cell phones because it was in your car. That was an unlock in terms of productivity. And if you think about an agent's productivity stack today, it's lead generation, it's a website, it's a CRM, it's a cell phone with voicemail and text. Like that's what's on the superhero utility belt for a real estate agent. And then maybe fancy people have some sort of long-term nurture or sort of other technology add-ons on top of that. Within the next couple of years, they will all also have some AI assistant or assistants. And those AI assistants are going to allow them to form a tighter relationship, to maintain a relationship with the client when they're up funnel and mid funnel. Maybe, as James described, also maintain a relationship once the person's in the home. There are startups going after that as well. And your original question, Chris, was what's the impact on the consumer? The consumer will be the beneficiary of all of that. They probably won't even really realize how much of that is AI powered. Like there's a company now, a startup that lets the quote unquote manager of the restaurant text the diner the next day to say, hey, how was the meal that you had last night at my restaurant? And obviously that's AI, that's vertical SaaS software that's doing that. But diners are loving it. They're like, oh my God, the manager reached out to me. That's so terrific. And so it's tightening the relationship between the restaurant and the diner. We're going to have lots of technology solutions like that in real estate, which will accrue benefit to the consumer, but also the professional.
Fantastic example. And I don't think anybody would have pointed to the answering machine as a technological unlock, but it couldn't be a better example, frankly, because all of a sudden you don't have to be there to answer the phone. We're seeing that same equivalent when it comes to the use of AI tools for automatic lead nurturing. You don't have to be on the phone, literally or figuratively, in order to continue those conversations. James, what about you? You are operating a business that is shepherding thousands of real estate professionals through this industry. How do you see things looking in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, to kind of summarize that a little bit, but I think you're going to see high level 20 to 30% attrition of the agent workforce. I think you'll see associations consolidate on a significant level as well. MLSs will continue to do that. There's a lot of really controversial subjects we're talking about as an industry right now that I think could affect the outcome of all of this, whether we get rid of CCP or not. I think people are severely underestimating what CCP does as an industry and how it helps consumers. I'm going to jump on Spencer's side. Like CCP could not be more pro buyer and seller than anything ever put in the industry. The MLS is the greatest marketplace that's ever been developed. We start making significant changes without understanding what the domino effects are. It could be, in some cases, catastrophic to this industry. And I think people are being very short-sighted on what that might look like. As far as shepherding people through it, look, we are also facing our North Star is the customer. We, as an organization, have made all sorts of changes focused on what is in the best interest of sellers and buyers and who our fiduciary is, continuing to focus on that. We can't not plug, I mean, Spencer, come on, we've got Hey Libby, which is a great, like somebody's got to say it. So like, to the point of like AI and like assistance, there's great technology being developed to, as he put it, kind of supercharge the, the agent. We're certainly looking at all of that. And Jack mentioned this comment. I'm just going to reiterate it. I'm sounding negative. I'm not trying to be, because I think this is the greatest opportunity to take market share that's ever hit residential real estate is right now. And we are absolutely doing that. We are very focused on how to articulate value differently. That's a big focus for us. How are we making sure we're explaining our value clearly to buyers? They understand what we do, to sellers that understand what we do. I'll give you a stat which will blow your mind. So the average buyer thinks that agents spend less than 15 hours helping them buy a house. That's going to irritate all the audience. The reality is the average agent spends about 87 hours helping somebody buy a house. We've got this massive disconnect between, perception and reality. So that's a big focus on it. I think if we do a great job as an industry of upping our game, thinking about how we're explaining things to consumers, listening to what their needs are, making changes to those needs, we're going to have a seat at the table. It's just everybody that isn't going to be part of that. And so it's not, to me, this isn't complex, Chris. It's just listen to what the customer's telling you they want, find a spot to fill that gap, continue to implement technology, partner with good companies, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there to grow market share. So
unbelievable.
Can I just give two quick historical analogies to support what James is saying? So during periods of tumult in an industry, that is just a terrific time for people to gain market share because all the cars get thrown up in the air and everything changes. So we started hotwire.com, for example, in 1999. In 2001, when September 11th happened, there was obviously a huge travel recession. People didn't want to travel because they were afraid to travel. And the online travel companies at that moment in time ended up benefiting greatly because, and actually the big airlines and hotel chains did as well, because there was so much change in the industry. What happened during that period of time was the offline to online migration of research and booking shifted dramatically, because when people started coming back to book travel, they increasingly did it on the web instead of over the phone with their travel agent. So what would have taken 10 or more years ended up happening in a year or two in terms of online migration. And then in our own industry, we saw this with the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, when when there was so many foreclosures and short sales and just such a disaster in the industry. What happened? Well, top teams ended up gaining market share. The portals ended up gaining, obviously, but the consumer also gained because the consumer started using the web a lot more. When they finally came out of their foxhole and started to think about buying a home again by 2008, 2009, they shifted to online. So now we're in the midst of this crazy tumult with the settlement and all this, all these open questions that clearly haven't all been resolved yet, as James indicated. We'll look back at this sometime. It's not fun when you're in it, but when I look back at 2008 and 2001, I think actually those periods of time really strengthened the companies that I was involved in, and I think you've all done the first part, which is you're listening to webinars like this, which means you care about understanding the context of the industry that we're all in, and plotting how you're going to be advantaged from it is the next step. And someday you'll look back and say, God, that was actually such a great period of time that accelerated my business.
Jack, let's piggyback off the last thing Spencer said. How are you advising folks who are trying to figure out ways that they can benefit from the changes that are disrupting the status quo right now? What do you think is the best move for folks who are looking 5 and 10 years into the future here?
Also, I'd like to give people a resource that we've just finished and will be released tomorrow. So 10 years ago, Chris, you may remember we produced a publication called the Danger Report, which was an NAR sponsored effort to do a strategic risk assessment of the industry. And we produced that report as the most popular report the National Association of Realtors has ever been affiliated with over 1 million downloads. And we distributed tens and tens of thousands of print copies of that report. And we went and we looked at that report. We wanted to do an update on that about 5 years ago. We went back to NAR and said, hey, we'd like to update the Danger Report and say where we are and what do people need to do to navigate ahead. And at the time we were getting into these lawsuits, they said, now's not the right time. So when the settlement was started to go through in March, the preliminary was put in front of the industry, Stefan and I said, well, now it's time to create a new report to help people in this time. So tomorrow we'll be releasing the Opportunity Report, which is a strategic assessment of the opportunities in real estate, we believe, for the next 3 to 5 years. And I want to give you a couple of stats. So we had ChatGPT analyze the Danger Report that we wrote in 2014. And we said, how accurate were all the things in the Danger Report? And it went point by point and it analyzed the news and all this kind of stuff. And again, it's an AI tool, so we can, debate the use of it. But it overall gave the report an 83% accuracy rating as to what we had in the danger report that actually came to pass. Things like regulatory action, it gave that 100%. Things like agents that were less skilled causing a negative impact on the industry, which it gave it a positive rating for that. So I'd say tomorrow we'll be releasing a report that has all of the best thinking, not of just us, but of the top 50, some of the top 50 leaders in the industry that we interviewed over a 3-month period about that exact question. And that report is a roadmap for professionals in the industry to make changes to their business. So that's what it is. And we see many of the elements we've talked about here: artificial intelligence, business model, the relationship with the consumer, the structure of organized real estate, the CCP. I mean, we every major topic was covered in that report because it was on the minds of the 50 of the smartest people in the industry for that report.
We'll definitely be on the lookout for that. What a great resource. Guys, as we are closing today, I'd like to ask each of you to offer a piece of advice. Now, we've got a lot of folks from a lot of different backgrounds here attending this webinar, maybe watching it afterward. But one common thread that we've found through all of these is folks who are watching this either live or in the replay are in a place in their business where they have opportunity ahead of them. Maybe they have market share they haven't captured yet, or transactions that they know that they could convert if they had the strategies and the way to get themselves into the right place at the right time. Given the opportunity that is often presented with disruption, if you were sitting across the lunch table from somebody in this webinar saying, what should I do today in order to get started using this as an opportunity, what would that advice be? James, you want to lead us off here?
Sure. I think you need to look at your entire business from top to bottom. Every single aspect of what you do, from the moment you talk to a seller or you talk to a buyer, tear it apart, look at it and go, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What are my competitors doing that have greater market share? Think about everything from their perspective. How do we increase our value? How do we articulate that value? I've said this publicly a lot, but we got lazy. Our industry got so lazy. We didn't even sit down and do buyer consults and ask the buyer what they wanted. And we said, oh, don't worry about compensations paid by the seller. It's just laziness. And so I think as an industry, this is a tremendous opportunity to go, what is on the horizon? What are we doing now? How do we increase that value? Another example, just Chris, the second or third most requested thing from buyers is floor plans. I know this is going to sound really basic, but I just had this conversation with Jeremy at Zillow, ironically, and I'm like, what percentage of listings have floor plans? He's like, I don't know, maybe 30%. I'm like, listing agents are sucky at their job. Give me a break. Spencer's going, it's less than that?
It's much less than 30%.
Fine.
Come on.
So you're making my point even better.
Yeah.
Come on. You can create a floor plan through Pacaso and it's free and it takes 5 minutes. So I would be looking at it going, what are we doing wrong? And go fix all that shit right now. And then on the buy side, same thing. How do we increase that value? Redo it all, get comfortable with that, and then do stuff like what you're doing now. Come to the webinars where you've got people who are willing to tell you the truth and go forward thinking on it. I'm going to promote Jack for just a second. Their company does an amazing job on that assessment. We did it, to be clear. We did the whole assessment, worked with Jack. He came out, we did a whole presentation with our brokers. I would encourage you to make sure you're looking at all your legal risks, because I'm going to say it one last time. They aren't done. They're coming back to the well, and it's going to be bigger this next go around. So you should be thinking about all of those risks that you may be doing still today that could end you up in a lawsuit. Remember, in this country, lawyers, I'm saying this politely, anybody who's a lawyer, the system is rigged. They can sue you for anything and you will have to pay to defend it. And it's cheaper to settle than going to court. So the whole system's designed to get money out of you. So you want to avoid everything possible that could get you into that spot. So it's my two things I would do today. So
sage advice. Jack, how about you? What advice would you give to somebody sitting across the lunch table who's looking to capitalize on that opportunity today?
Yeah, don't miss the moment. Just don't miss it. Like this is like Spencer said, I want to reinforce, he said during those times of change, don't miss it. Don't go to sleep. Then now's the time to put in the extra hours. We're doing the same thing at our company. Everything that we thought that we think is the future of this company, we've doubled down on. We're spending more money on it. We're investing in it. We're building for what we know is to come because we want to colonize the future, and you should too. And there's amazing. Don't be afraid of all this stuff. You engage with it, and that's why we put together the report we put together. And that's our advice. And a lot of the people that did that first part where they said, hey, come audit us, and we found all the bad stuff, said, okay, now let's work on the good stuff. How can we leverage that you know more now about how to do your contracts and how to train your agents and how to upskill them and how to get them to talk about how they work with the buyer? How can we use that as a recruiting tool? How can we use that as a growth tool? How can we look at M&A strategically right now? Because a lot of people are scared and want to get out of managing a brokerage and want to go back into just working with buyers and sellers every day. So there's a lot of the opportunities are there, but you have to put in the work and you have to recognize the moment for what it is, which is this is a very special time. I've seen two of them in my career in real estate. One was the great financial crisis, and then this one. And I think this one, because of the introduction of AI at the same time, is a bigger opportunity actually for most real estate professionals to go up a level or two in the next 18 to 24 months.
The only thing
Spencer?
I'd add is it's a good time of year to be due to the election. Between Thanksgiving and the Super Bowl, much less real estate activity happens. So this is a good time of year to get your ducks in a row, come up with your 2025, 2026 business plan, assess your lead generation sources, assess your technology solutions, your CRMs, figure out if you've got the right coach going into 2025, figure out if you're with the right brokerage or if you have the right business model, team, team, non-team, if you've got the right lineup, if you've got the right admin or transaction coordinator or offshore executive assistant, and then keep ChatGPT open as a browser tab or whatever your AI tool of choice is, and just start using it for stuff. And you start forming a habit. It takes a little bit of time and effort to just start using it the way we've all been used to using the internet, the web, or Google. But I think you'll find small ways that you can bring it into your daily productivity, and then keep your eye out for tech companies that are bringing real estate specific AI solutions into their product set. And I think there'll be a lot more coming in that front on that front in 2025.
Thank you, Spencer. Jack Miller, James Dwiggins, and Spencer Rascoff. This has been a fantastic presence panel. Your insights and opinions have been so appreciated by myself and by the attendees here today. Folks, we will make sure we send out a recording here so that you can review this and get all of the insights available on demand to review and to share with those who you think would benefit from it. Once again, guys, appreciate you being a part of this today, and I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day.